This is Fat2Fierce. Welcome to the Confidence Chronicles. I'm your host, Amy English. Join me on this empowering adventure towards a healthier relationship with food, body, and self, one delicious bite at a time. Hello there. Welcome to the Fat2Fierce podcast. My name is Amy English, emotional eating coach and creator of the Fat2Fierce coaching program. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about Fat2Fierce. Why the name? Because listen, I understand that the word fat can be triggering for a lot of people. It was triggering for me for most of my life, decades. Right? So it's always interesting when people hear the name Fat2Fierce. Why would I use that 3-letter word in the name of my coaching program? Well, I'm going to tell you why. Because ultimately, Fat2Fierce is a shift. It's a mental shift. It's a shift from fat mentality to fierce mentality. And I'm going to talk more about that today because here's the thing. We live in a society that is obsessed with changing our bodies. We all know this. It's not a secret. The diet industry is constantly booming, possibly even more so than before. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and now we have drugs, right? Now we have FDA-approved medication to help us change our bodies. And listen, I want to be very clear here. I am not against any of it. What I am for is women especially having the confidence to make a decision about their bodies from a place of empowerment, not a place of fear, of feeling less than, and a place where there's zero self-compassion, okay? I believe, and I've done this long enough to know and see that a decision to make any change made from a place of this fierce mentality that I'm going to talk about today, a place of empowerment, is not only easier to achieve, it's a heck of a lot easier to maintain. And one of the reasons the diet industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry is because most diets don't work. We know this. I'm not sharing any trade secrets here, right? We know that most diets don't work. We know that people try them, sometimes the same things over and over and over again. And I'm speaking from personal experience here. I know this. I lived this for a very long time. I have been on dozens and dozens of diets and programs and tried different things over the years. The only thing I haven't done was have surgery because that's a whole other story I will get into in another episode. I actually fired my doctor back in 2014-ish because she kept pushing surgery on me. And at the time, I had said to her, no, I need to figure out my problem with food because if I don't figure out why I keep eating emotionally and why I have this problem with stress eating, if I don't figure that out, how is the surgery going to help? The surgery is just going to shrink my body. I'm still going to have this problem with food, right? She didn't like my answer. I didn't like her continuing to push me to have surgery. And so I fired her and found a new doctor who was more supportive and more compassionate. Again, that's another story for a different day. We're talking about Fat2Fierce and the reason I chose this name. Okay, so I've been on multiple diets over the years and yo-yoed back and forth. And a lot of the reason why people yo-yo, okay, and why it's so hard to maintain the weight loss is because they haven't figured out the mental piece. That's what's missing. The mental piece of this is what's missing in the multi-billion-dollar diet industry. I fully believe that these programs, they want people to keep coming back. That's how they keep making their money. And I get very passionate about this topic, and it actually infuriates me, especially during the holiday season and soon into the new year, when, my Facebook feed is flooded with all the New Year's resolutions and ways to lose weight, ways to keep the weight off for good, try this, try all the different diets and ways of eating and blah, 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 blah. And again, this is where it gets tricky, because I'm not opposed to many of these things, okay? And I truly, truly believe that every individual has to figure out what works for them. What I want to do, where I want to help in this area is to stop the madness. And the madness is the keep going back and trying over and over and over and over again, when the mental and emotional piece of this has not been resolved. I want to help resolve the mental and emotional piece of this, so that whatever you decide to do, whatever people decide to do moving forward, they can do it with compassion, with love, with confidence, with clarity, and determination, whatever they decide. Okay? This is why I've created Fat2Fierce. And I went on a little bit of a rant there. It's all good. Okay? I'm going to kind of stick with my little bullets here now, all right? So when I think about the word fat, and listen, again, I know this word is triggering for a lot of people. I understand that. But really just take a moment to think of the energy behind the word fat. It's a 3-letter word, F-A-T. But just think of the negative energy that word holds for maybe for you, that it held for me for a really long time. It held a ton of negative power for decades. Okay. Very, very long time. And a lot of that is because I was bullied throughout school because of my body, because of my weight. This is one of the reasons why I started eating emotionally. My earliest memory of using food as comfort is when I was in elementary school. It's my earliest memory of sneaking food. And I used to do it after school when I got off the bus. And the house, my parents' house always had a plethora of goodies, whether it was my mom's baked goods or ice cream in the freezer or what have you. But it was always very easy for me to sneak food. And why? Food didn't make fun of me. It was comforting at that time. Food literally became my friend, the friend who didn't judge. And if that resonates for you, I just want you to know you're not alone. Every client that I've had over the years as an emotional eating coach, as a life coach, has a very similar story. Not identical, but similar story. I often share that the women that I work with typically started using food as comfort somewhere between the ages of 8 and 13. Earliest has been 8, oldest has been around 13, middle school years. So there's a range, right? But the one common denominator there is it typically starts very early. And one of the reasons, there's different reasons why it starts, right? For me, it was I was bullied. It felt like my body was always a target. Like when I look back on it, when I look back on those early years, like I clearly remember waiting in line for the school bus. I was probably in 3rd or 4th grade. And I remember the first time another student looked at me and called me Miss Piggy. Now, listen, I love the Muppets, and Miss Piggy is one of my favorites, and I think she's a gorgeous puppet. But we all know that being called Miss Piggy as a 8, 9, 10-year-old girl was not a compliment, okay? And it wasn't a compliment. It was intended to be hurtful and rude and, funny to them. Then there was orca the whale. I mean, fat ass, fat bitch. I remember one time I was in high school at this point, but I was working at the food court in a mall, and we were closing. The restaurant that I was working at was closing, and so we had to cut off the line. So the owner of the restaurant said, Amy, we need to cut off the line. You can't serve anyone past, this person right here. And so when I made that announcement, the first response was, "You fat bitch." I mean, it was like constant that my body was targeted. And then there were like the backhanded compliments, like, "You'd be so pretty if you just lost a few pounds. You'd be so pretty if you lost weight." Okay, that may resonate for you too. Again, these are all things I experienced. These are the things a lot of my clients have experienced. So it's very common. You're not alone if any of this is resonating for you, right? Bottom line, from an early age, my body was targeted. And what eventually happened is I became my own worst critic. I hated my body. I used to say terrible things about my body. I became a serial dieter, a yo-yo dieter with a strong habit of emotional eating, because remember, I was living in this world of have to lose weight, have to, get this weight off. And also food is a friend, food is comfort. And then there was a part of me that just wanted to be accepted for who I was and what I looked like, right? It's kind of living in some cognitive dissonance there, if you're familiar with that term, right? Holding two opposing beliefs. I need to lose weight. I want to be accepted exactly as I am. But even I couldn't accept me, because at that point, I was steeped into fat mentality. Okay, so what is fat mentality? Fat mentality is really just seeing yourself through society's fat-phobic lens. And let's face it, again, with a multi-billion-dollar diet industry, our society is very fat-phobic. I remember last summer 2022, summer 2022, I had shared a picture of one of the latest Sports Illustrated swimsuit models. It was the summer that they had some different shapes, different body shapes, body types on the cover of their magazine. And I shared one of them because for me, it was like, finally, someone got the message. We don't all look the same. There are a number of different body types and sizes in the world. And it was, for me, a beautiful representation of that. So I shared it on my Facebook business page. The comments. You can go look at it if you want. Go to Amy English, Fat2Fierce, and go look at the post from July of 2022 if you want, Sports Illustrated model, and you'll see the plethora of comments from that post. They were not positive. Fat phobia is alive and well, friends. Sad but true. So fat mentality is really seeing yourself through that lens. There's little to no self-compassion, right? There's constant criticism, feeling you're not good enough, believing you're not good enough, right? That your body, your weight, your size, the size of your jeans is a problem. Fat mentality is where you're constantly putting yourself down. You're obsessed. You're feeling obsessed about your weight and your size. I used to ask people all the time, do I look fat? Do I look fat in this? Ooh, do I look fat? I mean, you could probably go back to people from, friends from high school and whatnot, and it's probably one of the things they remember most about me. Amy constantly asking if she looked fat. It's like an obsession. And I would worry about what size I was wearing. I was famous for buying clothes that were too small, using them as quote unquote motivation to lose weight. By the way, one of the absolute worst things you can ever do for yourself. Okay. It's not helpful because it's not motivating. It's the opposite of motivating. Okay. It's not helpful and it just keeps you feeling really bad about yourself to have a closet full of clothes that don't fit. Okay. Let me get off that tangent. I'm very passionate about this topic, as you can probably tell. So fat mentality is really just a negative view of yourself and your body. It's disempowering and it keeps you distracted. Okay. And for anyone who struggles with food and emotional eating, guess what? Fat mentality is not helpful. You can probably guess why. Emotional eating is a response to negative emotions, okay? Typically negative emotions. There's some positive ones in there that I'll get into in episodes down the road, but for the sake of this particular episode, I just want to point that like emotional eating is typically in response to negative emotions, right? So feeling sad, mad, stressed, frustrated, overwhelmed, things like that, right? So when you're living in fat mentality and you're beating yourself up on a regular basis and just feeling really crappy about yourself and you struggle with food, what's going to happen? You're going to turn to food to feel better. You're going to turn to food to buffer those feelings. That's when, depending on what foods you typically gravitate towards. For me, it was always sweets, ice cream. If my mom made brownies that day, if there were some cookies lingering around, right? I always associate sweets with comfort, especially soft foods. There's a whole thing on food texture that relates to the different emotions that you're feeling. It's really fascinating when you think about it. I'll do an episode on that too. But for me, those softer, sweeter, creamier texture foods, warm brownies, like a warm hug. Okay. So when you were feeling bad about yourself and feeling bad about your body and feeling worthless and all these other things and, oh, why can't I lose weight and blah, 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 you're going to turn to food to feel better, right? And then you're going to get mad at yourself for doing it because you should know better. And guess what that does? It just keeps the spiral going. So no, fat mentality is not helpful. Ever. Really isn't. Instead, we want to live in fierce mentality, okay? What is fierce mentality? It's just a new perspective. It's literally looking at yourself, seeing yourself through a new lens. For some of us, for the first time ever, being able to see ourselves in a different light. And as somebody who struggled for a long time and hated her body for most of her life, I'm talking about me here, I can tell you, when you switch, when you shift to seeing yourself through that different lens, through the fierce lens, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more in a second here, when you can shift that view, whew, it is the most beautiful thing. It just feels better. Okay. So Fat2Fierce, living in fierce mentality. Yes, it's a new perspective. It's not about changing your body. Okay. It's not what we're talking about here. This isn't about losing weight. It's not about making any changes to your body. It's changing the way you think about yourself. It's changing how you feel about yourself. And it's changing how you treat yourself on a regular basis. That's the change when we shift from fat mentality to fierce mentality. It's fierce mentality is knowing that 3-letter word, F-A-T, holds no power over you. It's just a word. It doesn't define you as a person. And it doesn't hold you back anymore. You don't have to keep hiding, right? Because that's another thing. When I was living in fat mentality for, 30 years of my life, if not a little bit longer, I had to hide. I didn't want to rock the boat. Again, I mentioned earlier, it felt like my body was a war zone every time I walked out of my house, right? And so I didn't want to rock the boat. I didn't want people to notice me because I didn't want to be targeted. I didn't want to be called fat ass again. I didn't want to be called all the nasty names, Miss Piggy and Orca the Whale, right? And so what was the easiest way to avoid that? Hide, not get noticed. And not only that, but hiding behind baggy clothes, right? Not refusing to wear shorts in the summer, not wearing a bathing suit, even when my kids were little. I mean, this really has gone on for a long time in my life. It went on for a long time in my life. I've been living in fierce mentality for the last 7 years. And it's a total difference. So really living in fierce mentality, making this really critical shift for yourself, it's seeing your inherent value as a human being, having a human experience, regardless of your weight, regardless of what you currently look like. It's a whole new way to think about yourself and see yourself and really appreciate yourself, appreciate your body, and appreciate everything that your body does for you on a daily basis, regardless of what the scale says or what size pants you're wearing. Because really, your body does a whole lot for you. Our bodies are amazing. And we only get one. This is the one we get to walk us through, to carry us through this life. So what's going to feel better? Hating it on this journey or learning to walk as one in it, with it, as we experience life? Which one's going to feel better? Which one do you deserve? Fierce mentality is taking back your power from the fat phobia, from the self-hatred and the self-criticism. We want to shift to this fierce lens. So I'm going to do a little comparison between fat mentality and fierce mentality, just in case it's a little bit easier to understand the difference between the two. So I talk about Fat2Fierce. There's three main pillars, if you will. Okay. There's the fierce mind, the fierce body, and the fierce heart. Okay. So I'm just going to share what it looks like from a fat mentality, the fat view versus the fierce mentality and the fierce view. So when it comes to your mind, and keep in mind, when it comes to your mind, keep in mind, no, really though, I'm being silly. Consider that the average human thinks approximately, I don't know what the number is. I think it's 60,000 thoughts per day. Okay. We're not even aware of all the thoughts our brain is producing on a daily basis. Like every second, there's thoughts coming in. You can't stop them. Okay. This is just the way the brain works. So when the majority of those thoughts are negative, imagine, just consider how that feels, right? Not fun. So what we want to do is get a better understanding of what we're thinking on a regular basis. Like, what are some of the thoughts coming through? And listen, when you first start to look at this, it's not necessarily fun because you realize some of the thoughts that you're thinking really suck, right? Especially when they're in fat mentality. But here's and this is when I first started doing this is exactly what I did. I started taking inventory of all the thoughts I was thinking on a regular basis, just normal thoughts that would cross my mind without me even giving them a second thought and me believing them. That's the other thing. You don't have to believe all of the thoughts your brain produces, especially when they're coming through that fat phobic lens, okay, and fat mentality. Just because you think it doesn't mean it's true. It may not even be yours. You may be carrying it from someone from the past, which is a lot of what I was doing in fat mentality. Okay. So, with that said, the fat mind, what does that sound like? For me, it was, I'll be fat forever. Oh my goodness. I used to think that all the time. I'm going to be fat forever. This is me. I'm doomed. Right. So, that's what the fat mentality, the fat mind sounds like. Okay. What does it sound like in the fierce mind? I love this one, by the way. Okay. I'll be me forever. What? So just sit with this for a moment, okay? Fat mentality. I'll be fat forever. Fierce mentality. I'll be me forever. Just notice the difference between those two sentences. Which one feels better? Which one feels more true? Right? Fierce, when you're looking at your fierce body, okay? Now, I had a lot of sentences about my body back in the day. I really did hate my body. So one of my thoughts was, I hate this body. Okay? So when you're looking at the fierce body, what's a better thought to have? This body is mine. There's got to be at least one thing I can appreciate about this body. When I started doing that, when I started recognizing maybe not things I liked about my body right off the bat, that was real hard, but finding parts of my body that I could appreciate helped me, like it kind of gave me an entry point, right? It kind of gave me something to bounce off of, a way to start exploring parts of my body that I could appreciate, which then led me to find parts of my body that I could like and ultimately that I could love. Okay. And it started with my fingernails. It started with my eyebrows. It started with my eyes, with my nose, with my lungs. Okay. Your organs, they're part of your body. They're part of what keep you going, right? My arms. I could appreciate my arms at the time. My kids were little and there were a lot more hugs, and they're teenagers now. So hugs are kind of rare at this point. But when they were little, I used to appreciate my arms for being able to hug my babies, right? Finding parts of my body that I appreciated so that I could go from, I hate this body, to this body is mine. I can find parts that I appreciate now. And then when it comes to your heart, to building your fierce heart, right? This is talking about the emotions, all right? And so when you think about stress, like let's talk about work stress just for a second. Ever have one of those moments when like everyone's driving you absolutely nuts and like your boss is breathing down your neck and like you just cannot wait for the day to be over? And it's like, hand over the cookies and no one gets hurt. Because you just need something sweet or you need something to munch on, right? To pass the time because you're feeling stressed, blah, 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 blah. So hand over the cookies and no one gets hurt, thinking the cookies are going to solve for the stress. Okay? That's fat mentality thinking when it comes to your heart, when it comes to your emotions. The fierce heart is more like, wow, I'm feeling really stressed right now. I notice I'm feeling stressed. Listen, nobody likes to feel stressed. It's not a fun emotion to have, but it is part of the human experience, okay? There are going to be times in your life when you feel stressed. It would be weird if you didn't when certain things happen, okay? So just recognizing that stress is kind of part of the package, recognizing that you feel it, finding ways to help yourself relieve stress without using food, simply by asking, am I hungry right now? Do I really want to eat those cookies? How am I going to feel afterwards? Is there something else that I can do in order to, help myself get through it in this moment? Are cookies going to solve the problem? Are they going to make me feel less stressed? No, probably not. In fact, they're probably going to make you feel more stressed because then you're going to be mad that you ate the cookies. And we all know what's going to happen then, right? And if you are focusing on, a meal plan or something like that, you're going to be mad at yourself that you screwed up. And then it's going to be, why bother? I can't do this anyway. Let me have more cookies. Screw it. I'll go get some donuts on the way home from work too. Because that's how this works. Okay. When you're in fat mentality. All right. So the fierce heart is really just recognizing your emotions as a human being, recognizing them, sitting with them, and then asking yourself some questions. Do I really want to eat this? How am I going to feel afterwards? What's going to feel better? Is there something else I can do to alleviate this stress in the moment? And then, listen, here's part 2 of this when you're living with a fierce heart. When you do eat the cookies, because listen, let's face it, sometimes it's going to happen. There is no perfection in this process. So when it happens and you do eat the cookies, a fierce heart doesn't say, you suck. Why did you do that? Oh my gosh. No, a fierce heart is like, all right, of course you did this. You've had this habit for a really long time. We're working on it. We're working through it. We're figuring out ways to solve for this. We'll try to do something different next time. There's the self-compassion. Ultimately, at the end of the day, Fat2Fierce is really going from treating yourself like an asshole to an ally. Okay? It's becoming a supporter with yourself. It's becoming a friend. And it's changing your mindset around you as a person, your body, yourself, your emotions, and just understanding that you're a human being who's possibly had this habit with food, with diets, with all the things for a really long time. And it's going to take some time to unwind it. And that's okay. Because here's the deal. When you heal the relationship with food and your body that was formed under the scrutiny of our weight-obsessed world, you take your power back. And that's what it means to go from fat to fierce. All right, thanks for listening today. If you would like more information on working together, go ahead and visit amyenglishcc.com. There you will get information on the Fat2Fierce program that you can do. It's a self-paced, self-study program you can do on your own. You can also get more information on how to schedule a discovery call with me and learn more about working together, one-on-one life coaching. All right, hope you have a great day. Are you ready to take control of your eating, embrace your body, and boost your confidence? Then let's get fierce. Start your Fat2Fierce journey today. Go to amyenglishcc.com for more resources and to book your discovery call.